A lot.
Oh my god. Okay, so I almost feel like there's like a lot of stuff we could use there, but under the duress of like,
453 is how
yeah,
long your reign would be at.
cool. All right.
Use it for whatever the fuck you want. Save it and put it in
Use it. I could. I'm
save
not
it.
going
I
to.
don't care.
No. You're stoned. You do care.
No, I'm not that stoned. I'll
Okay,
get
well
it.
you need to get more stoned then.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, even I don't care anyways. You know me. What do I give a fuck about? I'm gonna share my opinion regardless. But anyways,
I know you will. I saw your
yeah.
review. How about you
Oh,
introduce us and I'm going to recap
hell yeah,
the,
that's
the
awesome.
the anger that you're feeling right now.
That's cool. That's cool. So yeah, we're gonna start this bitch. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. As of time recording, almost a month since the last time we sat down with you. That's my fault. It's your man, Brian Williams, followed by the greatest CCW world champion of all time, Adam Helmsing. And we're sitting here. We're going to talk some fucking OCW. So, Adam, how you feeling?
I was feeling great until you came into chat and started yelling at me.
I don't yell at you.
You were very passionate about this. I'm very sorry that you feel this way. I'm very sorry. It is okay. You know why it's okay? It's okay because you just recently passed 300 days as world champion, and that puts you at the fourth all time. And that means you're closing in pretty quickly, actually, on number 3, which would be Cassidy Hayes' OCW title reign, 316 days. But that's if we're keeping the track the way that I'm keeping track.
Right.
And that's why you yelled at me, because you don't keep track the way that I keep track. You keep track in legitimate days, apparently.
Yes, but that's I won't go on the tangent because I'm sure people will get all up in arms. But anyways,
okay, man.
I like today's conversation that we have in mind. Don't worry, people. There's actually some uncut behind the scenes pre-recording rant that Adam has that I'm sure he'll use as mental terrorism to try and blackmail me someday with it, which I'll say, fuck you.
I'm not
But
really
today,
going to use that. No. I'm not going to use that. I won't. I would never do that. I will say that you called me out on not being able to spell Toronto, though.
I did. Yeah, he's an educator and can't spell Toronto. But regardless, he and I are great. I love him. Today, Adam had a very nice topic or two that we were going to be talking about. And I'm actually going to start it off because Adam brought up the topic. So I'm going to start it. So the first topic of the conversation today is going to be what the hell qualifies as passing of the torch. And now I wrote part of a script because I love Adam and I will indulge with his need to having some form of formalness. But I'm not going to look at that because in terms of OCW, what makes a true passing of the torch moment is what actually happens. And I think within OCW, a quote unquote real passing of the torch is almost extremely rare to outright impossible. I say that just because with what OCW is being a hybrid player versus player EFED, you do not have the benefit of, let's just even keep it in our niche of, AI, story driven highlight reel EFEDs, because you do not get to make the decision on if you win or lose. The only way you win or lose is if you quite literally win or lose the match. So I don't think there are intentional passing of the torch moments because just that right there. OCW nothing is guaranteed in the matches. Unless maybe you're Adam when you are probably the greatest handler on the sticks. You can probably guarantee you're gonna win or lose. But I also have other thoughts that I'm gonna add to that, and there's some certain things and examples that I have written down. But first I want to hear what Adam thinks.
All right, well, first off, I am not remotely close to the greatest handler on the stick. That will always be Drago Caesar because he is a fucking monster. And second, I didn't come up with this topic. This was a Paul Pugh thing.
Oh, okay. Those figure.
All right, yeah. You think I'm coming up with original ideas? Come on here. What the fuck? No, Dan put this out there. And it was like a spirited conversation in the chat. And I'm like, well, fuck it. Like, sure, let's go ahead. Let's roll with this here. So what the hell qualifies as passing of the torch? And by the way, you wrote what, 3 fucking paragraphs, and I wrote the rest of the fucking script. So thank you for ignoring everything else that I wrote. But that's fine. That's fine. That's how I roll.
Part.
You did get to the main part. I got Brian's perspective here. 2 paragraphs.
It's more than 2, dude. Fuck you.
I'm
Like,
sorry.
are you seriously not even scrolling?
I didn't scroll down far enough. Oh,
Okay.
I see that I actually see you're watching now. Okay. Shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
try.
So, okay. So I'll start rambling off my notes here. So passing the torch, in appropriate idiom in wrestling, but only with suitable history and reverence to the moment, which is where I do agree with you. It's really hard to do that within OCW because on one hand, with professional wrestling, you have designated winners, like this person's going to go over. This is the plan that we're following through on, and you have a lot of time that you can build towards that. That's still a lot harder to do within the hybrid nature of OCW. So I really kind of came down on how many have there been, and I don't feel like there has been many at all. So it's like it's not the same as putting someone over, but the notion's the same. You're like rewarding someone or identifying them as being the next, whatever. But passing the torch to me is more significant because the expression is thought to be like this ancient Greece, the idea of passing the torch in a relay race, but it's undergone like this huge substantial transformation. So when I think about it from a wrestler's perspective, it's a moment of historical significance with a significant build to the moment between 2 notable characters. So the first one that actually came to my mind when I started considering this was outside of OCW, and I'll get to OCW in a second, but the first one that came to my mind is, The Rock versus Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam 2002. Are you familiar with the match?
Yeah.
So to me, that was one of the first that jumped to my mind. To you, is that, am I on the right track? Like, am I thinking the right way?
I would agree so. Yeah.
Okay, so I went back, I watched a few videos to refresh my memory and to see if I was like neglecting any of them. So I actually Googled it because shit, there's a ton of wrestling matches that to be out there. So I felt like a lot of the videos kind of missed the point of like the crucial element of passing the torch. It has to be that handoff to the next generation. So I see a lot of lists include The Rock versus Hogan at WrestleMania 18.
No.
I don't actually think that counts as a.
No.
I don't think that counts as a passing of the torch, and this will bleed into when we talk about OCW as well, because that match was like billed as icon versus icon, and they're both made men, and no matter what, if they win or lose after the match, they're both going to be made men, regardless of the outcome. So on the other side of that, it's like my favorite. It's one of my favorite matches of all time. But then some other potential examples could potentially be like Steve Austin versus Shawn Michaels. I think that falls into more of the Rock versus Brock category, or even like Okada versus Tanahashi at Wrestle Kingdom 8. So those are the 3 big ones that stand out to me in terms of like passing the torch in wrestling terms. But I also think it's very easy to fall into the wrong thought process with that. Like The Rock versus Hogan, so many people think of it as passing a torch, really not a passing of the torch. And I actually think more OCW matches that might be considered will fall into that Rock versus Hogan category more so than the other ones. So anything that you wanted to throw in there, just kind of based off of my overview of what I'm thinking here?
No. I'm waiting to get into the nitty gritty on the OCW side.
Right. Okay, so for me then to judge OCW, you got to have suitable history and reverence to the moment, 2 notable characters, and that's going to be kind of different for everybody. Like everybody looks at OCW differently. The moment's got to be built to and expectant, and then I really do feel it has to be a handoff to the next generation, which is a really, really problematic thing when you're talking about OCW because, what qualifies as the next generation and what's the old generation, that is going to be pretty open to debate. So you have more of an insight into the OCW, and I have some that I'll talk about after. So why don't you go ahead and tell me from OCW perspective what you think qualifies as a passing of the torch moment?
I honestly, I just don't think they're in the time that I've been in OCW. I would have to say I don't feel like there has been one. I don't think it's actually no. I'm sorry. There's only been one, and you even disagreed with it. The one thing that I feel like that was a true passing of the torch moment was when Antonio Everett beat B17 at Resolution to become the CCW champion, because that was the feud. The entire time was how B17 lost to Antonio Everett and King of OCW by the roll up. How Antonio Everett just always seemed to have one up over B17, and B17 at the time, which is kind of ironic because right now he's in that same position, he was the most dominant, the greatest world champion right then and there. And Antonio, it was kind of like an Andre Hulk moment where both of these guys were undeniable who was the one that was going to have to be faced with the loss. And Tony actually went, even within the OCW, you know how OCW works, he went and made it work because he beat B17 and he had a dominant world championship reign. Whereas now that I was rereading the script, I remember Pugh even said how he passed the torch to Doc, which I disagree with, because what exactly was the torch passing? Him losing the world championship to Doc, him putting Doc in the main event scene. It doesn't really pan out to me, because that world championship reign, Doc only defended the championship twice. Two good names, Pugh and B17, but he then lost to H2O, who at the time went on to have the longest world championship reign. And H2O would have ended that torch passing moment because H2O had already been in OCW. He wasn't a new generation guy. Like, Doc was newer, a new generation guy, whereas Harvey was an established veteran. He had been here. He had done that. So it's like, I just don't think you can really try and say a lot of people did these torch passing moments, because it's like, we've seen them get attempted, right? We've seen it where, my quick 3 examples here for you is Tony versus Iceman. Tony was the dominant international champion, and we kind of saw after Iceman won the title went into disarray. It was like Tony was the foundation for that championship. You know, he laid the stability, and everyone after him up until Nate Ortiz lost it on their first defense or their second one. A lesser one is Danny Watts versus El Parca. Danny Watts beat El Parca when Parca had the longest international championship reign. Danny defended it once, lost it, and it was the same thing. Like, Tony and Parca had very similar things where they were the stability. And then probably the biggest one is Russ versus Sheldon. You know, I remember being in the voice chat when that resolution came on, and people were losing their fucking minds because Sheldon did it. He conquered Russ. You know, his build up, how Russ was saying he wasn't ready. Like, that was a very good story. And he won it. And what happened? He lost his first title defense. And then it took him a very long time to get back to the world title scene, where he then lost again. So it's like, I just don't think within the OCW confines, a passing of the torch moment, it's almost impossible.
Well, so one of the biggest things I've struggled with here is, like, how strict should I be when it consider the idea of the passing of the torch? And that's been a really big challenge for me. It's like, okay, how strict should I be with this concept? Because when I was applying it to, to real life, like, it was very difficult for me to even come up with more than a handful. So with an OCW, it becomes even more convoluted in terms of what you can and cannot do with a hybrid lead. So, like, right off the bat, I can say I disagree that B17 and Tony was the passing of the torch. I was dominant. I don't feel like I was iconic or anything like that. I don't feel like I had gotten to that upper echelon. And the fact that Tony actually was the person that got the best of me multiple times really did paint it in a certain light that Tony was kind of favored going into this match. Like, he's gotten the best of me multiple times. He's not chasing me so much as he's chasing the title. and I was to him just this another roadblock to him to get over. So I didn't feel like I held up my end of the bargain for what passing the torch would be. I certainly don't feel that I was in like an iconic state or anything. And I also have the hindsight of saying I really enjoy what I've done with this title reign a lot more in terms of story and in terms of presentation of the character than I did with the first one. This one I feel has been far superior to the first one overall. And I feel like if the circumstances arise in whatever in terms of somebody building themselves up as a young star to make it happen, that this one would be the opportunity to pass the torch. So I do have a few examples though, and you can tell me if you agree or disagree with these. And I kind of dug through OCW history to find these. And the first one I had was Nate Ortiz versus Drago Caesar at Resolution 17. I don't remember when you came into the Fed. I don't think you were in the Fed in 2017. No. Okay, so Nate Ortiz was the champion, the OCW champion going into that night. And Drago in 2017 is just coming off of a year where he had this very long feud with Mugen over the NA title, and he was just starting to get to the upper echelon of the main event scene. And Nate Ortiz was Nate Ortiz. He was the final boss standing in the way. And for the longest time, Drago Caesar was... Drago Caesar, a lot of people realized, oh, this guy is going to be the next. He's going to be the next high quality, on the sticks, like he's the next beast. And he was that next beast, but he was that beast in the North American, the NA title scene. And then eventually he does make it. He beats Paul Pugh on Riot, I think. And maybe you could say that that's, passing the torch. But then eventually it falls back to Nate Ortiz, and then Drago Caesar at Resolution defeats him in the main event. So for me, like, all those things are kind of coming together. It's Nate Ortiz was the previous generation, Drago was becoming the face of this generation. It happens at Resolution. It's for the OCW title. It's in the main event. Like, the significance of the moment certainly stands out to me as being a passing of the torch. And then I'll give you the other two, and you can kind of go ahead and critique what you're thinking here. The other one I said was Empress versus Holly Hunter at Resolution 15. And I actually really went into this trying to find a passing of the torch one for like Ashley Moore or Valkyrie. And I just really struggled to find an appropriate one for that. Although I think if you look hard enough, you're probably going to find something for Valk or something for Ashley Moore. But I ended up selecting, Empress versus Holly Hunter. Once again, it's at Resolution. Empress is the champ, however, this time. Holly Hunter is a bigger name from previous generations. So it doesn't quite fit as well with Drago Caesar versus Nate Ortiz, but I still felt that ultimately Empress defeating her, getting over that, helped to solidify what Empress was to become in the future. And I did put maybe Velk defeating Blaine in 2019 because I know that Velk had tried to defeat Blaine on a couple of occasions and come up short. And Blaine in 2019 was really at the top of the division. Like, she had beaten Dragana, and Dragana was like unbeatable. So Blaine defeats her, but then Valkyrie is the one who ultimately knocks me off. And that might fall into that category, but it still suffers from the same concept of like, Blaine was dominant, not really iconic. So those are my three examples. How do you feel about those examples? Like, do they make sense to you?
No, they don't.
Okay.
No. So, all right, I should probably add though.
Okay,
I think it's just because I don't. It's kind of just like we said, with passing of the torches and just how those moments are in real wrestling, and with just how OCW is. I just don't think it's really like, I don't see it, and like the one thing. So Nate versus Drago, I really have no opinion of it. I always hear, I mean, you even said it literally earlier that, Drago's the best handler. So it's like, you can't really pass the torch to the dude who no one wants to no one wants to play, or people always lose to him. I'm not saying that Nate was ducking him, but it's like I don't know, but I'm not as big on that. But M versus Holly, no way, man, because that title reign when she had it, that was, I'm almost certain, her like first breakout women's world title reign. And it's just, Emp, even without a title, has shown time and time again, especially during that period of time, that she is one of the top content creators and one of the top handlers in everything that she does in OCW. So it's just one of those things where the metrics just don't fit to me, because I'm almost certain at that time, I think her and Holly Hunter were having I think it was a three-peat feud. I think they had worked like 3 pay-per-views in a row, because just the story that they had, which no problem with me, no problem in that, but it's just, it doesn't fit the metrics. And then Valk and Blaine, I know I goof about and I always talk about the big woman, but it's just like Blaine, to me, and in my experience of being here, she is not really, like, doesn't fit the metrics as well. She's a super imposing force. She's been pretty dominant, but she's just not, she's not someone where she has this huge swath of momentum that when she loses to someone in a big match, it's like, whoa. Like, Valk has always been and probably will always be one of the absolute top baby faces in OCW whenever she's around. So it's just in how we're trying to, box in what a passing of the torch moment is. I just don't think any of those, like the first one, I wasn't really here. I'm not trying to rile feathers right now and like get people upset with how I say stuff about legends or relics. But the other two I was, and it's just like, nah, those people, both Emp and Valk, were already so established. Like, maybe it gave them like a rejuvenated platform. And I'm not, it's not a passing of the torch.
Okay. I think the only one I would like put up a bigger fight on is probably the Nate versus Drago one. I would put up a really big fight on that one ultimately, because yes, while 2016 and 2017 rolls around and like we're becoming knowledgeable that Drago is a beast on the sticks, it was, can he do it? Can he do it when the lights are the brightest thing? And this is kind of the conversation that happens in real life too. Like, a wrestler can be really good. They can win a lot of matches. They can look completely dominant. But there's always that question of like, okay, but how do they handle the pressure when it gets to this big moment? And those questions are starting to be asked about Drago in 2017, because he does win the title from Pugh. He holds it only for 33 days. And then Mugen takes it, Nate Ortiz takes it, and then Drago builds himself back up. And this is the moment where, okay, he had a hiccup. Can he recover from that hiccup? Like, is he going to get back to the top? Will he be able to do it? And to me, I think that does lend itself to the significance of the moment. If this had been Drago's like 4th or 5th, or hell, if it was even his 3rd, this conversation's probably not happening the way it is. But in this moment, had a title, short reign. I don't think he defended it. I think he lost in his first defense. To me, then, Nate Ortiz, resolution, redemption storyline, everything kind of fits for me in that. So that's the only one I would probably put up a huge fight with. I very much agree with number 3. And like I said, I was kind of really searching for one to define for Velk or Ashley Moore. That was what I was kind of hunting for. The Empress, Holly Hunter, I'm not gonna put up a stink or fight on that one. But ultimately, I think all this is to say that I don't think my criteria really works well for OCW. Like, if I'm trying to define passing of the torch, I don't think it works well with what I defined earlier. I likely have to relax my standards. So if I go through a list of champions, and this was kind of what the conversation turned into in the Discord, and you're looking through and look at all the champions, and you can like say yes or no. The person who's currently at the top has had their passing of the torch moment in a more relaxed criteria of judgment, and then you can kind of apply your own perspective onto it. But for the sake of simplicity, I kind of wanted to hear if you felt that this particular title, reign, has somebody at the top that's had their passing of the torch moment, even if it doesn't necessarily fit within the extremes of what we've been defining. So you understand what I'm kind of trying to get at here?
Yeah, I think I can kind of work with you.
Okay, so like OCW world title, you're at the top. Have you had a passing of the torch moment?
That would probably be more question for you. I wouldn't really know where to begin on talking about myself in that type of light.
Okay, I if I'm relaxing my standards and I'm thinking like the moment where it became you're ready to go to the next level, you're ready to be the next person. I actually had said that it would be the uh, the ISU match when you and ISU were going back and forth. Was it for the North American or the international?
International.
Okay, so when you and ISU were going back and forth for that, and then you kind of you overcame him officially back in because you guys had a couple of different matches together, right? You had one
Mm-hmm.
at Lucian, then you guys had one at there's another one, but you lost to Danny Watts for that one. So I was thinking
Mm-hmm.
like the ISU match at Lucian was your passing of the torch moment. Agree or disagree with that one?
I don't like. I probably disagree. I think it sounds like a nice compliment, but I don't know. I don't think even me or Rust would probably agree to that because I feel like even after the fact, like Isu went on to do a bunch more good stuff. I mean, I'm doing my stuff. Other people can, judge what I'm doing later or now, but no, probably not. Probably not that. I thought maybe you were gonna go when I won my first world title against Harvey, but even then, um I don't know. I don't know, man. That's tough.
Well,
So
I'm trying to bring it back all the way. Like I'm throwing out a lot of what I said. I'm trying to fixate more on the okay, this handler because like I said, I think this is what the conversation turned into, and people could remind me and tell me if I'm wrong or not. But I'm pretty sure the conversation eventually turned into like, when was it evident that this person was ready for the main event? So that's what I'm trying. That when I'm going through this, I'm trying to think of that. Like, when did it become evident that this person is, I don't want to say destined or anything like that, but when did it become evident that this person is likely to be successful moving forward into the main event?
I mean, if you're kind of restricting that, like the a passing of a torch, kind of like that, you probably lost me for a bunch of the people, except Marissa. I get like because I feel like for all of the champions right now, I'm indifferent on my own. The people can make their own judgment on that. B17. Yeah, you for sure had a passing of the torch moment when I don't and even then I guess like depending on who you are, I feel like for you, your biggest moment for me is when you won the CCW championship in the chamber and you had that huge babyface moment, very big story payoff, you finally come into the light. I would say that would be yours, but I feel like how I'm looking at it is like the passing of the torch is okay, this person is ready. Like they're able to hold their own, and whether it's them being a champion, their title reign like finally kicking off, or that they or even like what you said they did not, I don't want to say did deserve their spot, but like okay, hey, like you got that spot now, like you're in the main event. So yeah, obviously B17 has that. Let me look at your list here. North American, no, I do not think Jinx has had his passing of the torch moment. I think he still has a bunch of work to do for his title reign in general. We've seen that he's capable on the sticks, but like you and I had talked about before, it's not just about winning the matches. It's also about your stories.
Okay.
International champ Nate Ortiz, obviously Nate Ortiz is Nate Ortiz. So I mean, I couldn't tell you which one because I've only been here for a limited number of years since he's been here since day one. So Nate, if you get to this point, if you even listen, maybe bestow that knowledge upon us, my good man. Women's world title, absolutely. Marissa, after winning the title, how she did, I felt like that was a multi-year long odyssey that finally closed up. She proved that she is a fighting champion when she defended it against Pearl. You know, that was definitely a coming of age moment for her, you know, just finally getting the limelight that she deserved. She's been one of the most prominent members of the women's division ever since she came in. The handler behind Marissa has constantly upped their game and, you know, revolutionized their character. That's not the right word, but you know, spiced up their character and you know, always kept themselves interesting. So yeah, Marissa absolutely. Dragana is Dragana, so yeah. I once again, she's kind of in that realm where I don't know everything about her, so you can add that comment afterward. And
Right.
then the last one is Underground Elite, which I would absolutely agree. I think you know they beat the pivot and their first title defense and now just kind of the work that they're doing in the tag division. You know, at first, I will completely admit I did not think they would last long. I mean, their reign is still very young, but you know, with what they've been doing, they've shown that hey, we are the champions, and you're gonna take notice to us. So yeah, they absolutely had one as well.
Okay. I think yeah, that's yeah. You mentioned everybody now. Anything past that is old and retired stuff. Yeah. So I'll go down the list as well. Like obviously, I already said Parka. I kind of looked at Aizu as being that moment of this person's ready for the next stage. Yeah, I did. I for the CCW as well. However, I would say it wasn't necessarily the chamber. It was the fighting of Jacob Trance. I don't know if I
Okay.
fought. I don't know if I fought Trance directly after the chamber. I'm pretty sure I did because he and I were the final two in the chamber. Like I had my babyface moment, but then defending against Trance at the next pay per view, I think was no. It was actually 3 shows later before I defended. But either way, defending against Jacob Trance was kind of that moment of solidification for me. Yeah, I agree with you. Jinx hasn't had one of those. But you know, who's there's not exactly people necessarily working in the North American division. Like this is a young division, or well, I shouldn't say young, but this is the division for um for like the younger generation, right? Like this is where people cut their teeth and make themselves stand out. Um, International, Nate Ortiz. When you're talking about, it, I'm like, shit. Where the hell did Nate Ortiz have his passing of the torch moment? And that is, that's something that is hard to define, and I probably have it wrong. I think, and this is going to lose a bunch of people. I think it was against Nick Cage around Resolution 3. And I say around Resolution 3 because actually Resolution 3 wasn't their final match. But I think it was Nick Cage in like 2007. But people can tell me if I'm wrong. I only have limited information to go off of with that. Women's champion Marissa. I I think the judgment's out for that. Like beating Empress based upon what I'm like saying right now, yeah, I guess it falls into that category. Marissa Welch has proven that she's ready for the big leagues. But I also agree with what you had said before. Like all the things she's doing beforehand demonstrates that she didn't need the title to stand out, right? Like she was very much like Empress. Like Empress didn't need the title to stand out. It's just a bonus to have it. So Women's Pride, Dragana. This is a really tough one because Dragana's held the women's title like in 2018 and 2021, and so she's always just been this present character that is consistently doing really awesome work that you want to watch and you want to enjoy. So it's hard to say that there was one definitive moment. It's just wildly amazing consistency with Dragana. So unified tag team, absolutely not. Haven't had the torch passed to them yet, but mostly because same concept that we talked about with the North American title. Like, this is a division that sees a lot of turnover. It sees a lot of new people kind of coming up through the ranks and stuff, and they're going to eventually face off against bigger names than Click Bay, and I hope that they're successful in that. But I'm also curious to see who forms. Obviously, we have we have Sammy and Iceman, getting together, and it looks like we're headed towards that trajectory. But I don't even know if a victory over them necessarily says, okay, these guys are, ready for the next level. So it's really hard. This is a tough conversation. It's a fun one to think about, but ultimately, I do fall into the category of, like, I don't think there has been many at all, and I think that's for a good. I think that's a good thing that there hasn't been that many that we can clearly define and say is a passing of the torch moment, because they should be rare and they should be revered as these awesome moments.
Okay, that's an interesting.
Well, I mean, if we agreed on everything, this would be wildly more boring. I mean, there's probably some people who think this is boring, but
fuck them.
Fuck them. We don't agree on everything. That's the beauty of this.
I do think it would be cool if OCW did have more, I guess, passing of the torch moments, but I also just think trying to say a passing of the torch and using it in the way of like how real wrestling does, it's kind of unfair, because you're more so helping a person get a bigger platform. Your character has when you're doing it, I guess you can tie back to it, like Pugh was that big name for Doc, and he helped him get to that next level, whereas, right now there isn't as many big names that when people beat them, it's like, oh shit, like, but it also, like you said, it has to lead, it has to have the story element to it as well. Because I mean, if you're just beating them on a weekly TV show, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, but also, if a legend comes back into the professional wrestling world, Stone Cold Steve Austin, when he came back and he fought Kevin Owens, he's obviously not going like he could, right? There is, the match is scripted in order to tell a story ultimately, and ultimately Stone Cold wins and stuff, but the story is ultimately told that he still has it even at this advanced age. In OCW, that doesn't exist. If a legend takes time off, and I can testify to this, I'm not a legend, but I can testify to taking time off. If you take time off from this game and you come back, these games change a lot over the course of the entirety of OCW. And it's a bit of a shock to the system when you bounce back into a new game and you're trying to learn it. So, hats off to people that come back and learn the game, but it takes time to do that. So a legend can come back, be presented as a legend, and then they can get their ass absolutely kicked because ultimately they're not familiar with the mechanics of the game, and they don't have the protection of the match being structured in said ways. So when somebody older comes back and they pick up the game and they learn it pretty quickly, it's becoming more and more common. Like, some of the people that are coming back, they're able to snap back into it really quickly. I've never been able to do that. I've never understood how people can do that. The fact that Nate Ortiz and Pugh were able to pick up the game and get good at it pretty quickly kind of baffles me, because I need to play the game regularly. Otherwise, I lose it. I lose it completely. But you're not one of those people, so what can I say?
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, you just fucking pick up the game and you play. You're fine.
I mean, it really just depends on the level that you want from me.
I fucking hate it. Like, I just can't do it. It pisses me off so much, actually. Okay, so the next topic, anyways, I picked this one. I don't remember who asked me, but I know somebody asked me, like, who do you listen to? Like, who are the people that, like, you talk to get advice? And I'm like, well, I've always been very open that I have, like, this rotating list of people that I value their feedback just a little bit more than others. It took me a long time to learn that it's impossible to make everybody in OCW happy, and I ultimately feel that you are wasting your time if you're trying to do so. So, more important than trying to make everybody happy is, like, making yourself happy. If you hear what everyone is saying about you and you attempt to fix it, what you hear one week, chances are you're going to hear something different the next week. from all these smaller voices that are just kind of yapping, and then fixing it is just going to lead you to running in circles, and it's not worth it. It's ineffective use of time. It's a morale drain. It leads to more criticism because you're bouncing back and forth. And, like I said, I was part of this cycle at once. I could not hear a word of critique without overthinking it. And I'd think, should I change my attire? Should I change my music? Should I change my moveset? And it drove me absolutely bonkers. Eventually, I started to develop this circle of people who I would listen to a bit more. And I think people need to do this. And I kind of started referring to it as my 5. So I understand the issues with projecting based on small sample sizes, but that's what I do. If there's 5 people, if 3 of them are pretty happy with what I'm doing, and the other 2 are kind of iffy on it, ultimately, okay, 3 out of 5, maybe I'm going the right way with it. I might think about it a little bit more. If all 5 of them are happy, then I pretty much just do what I continue to do. I don't really change my perspective based on hearing other people outside of this 5 critique me, to be honest. So no order. This is who my 5 are. Jay's on there, and Jake is on there. And I think this one's pretty obvious. They should be 2 people that everyone is using because they're the ones who see your content first, and they serve as the voice and the response to your content on commentary. And especially Jay, now that he started talking over all the matches, he's the first person that sees your content. Him liking it is a big deal to me. Tibby's another person. I've told the story on a couple of occasions. He called me boring in 2017, and I will never forget it. So he's also just a fan. So if you produce content, he's going to be happy. But if you like something, then his response, makes me joyous. When he goes out of his way to say something, it's pretty rare nowadays. But when he goes out of his way to say something, I'm pretty happy about that. And I also won't forget that he was one of the few people who, Adam, you're boring. Here's why you're boring. You're boring because you do this. B17 is a boring character. You need to make changes. He was one of the first people who came to me and gave me honest to God critique, but also gave me the here's how you fix it. 4, I'm kind of cheating here. It's Dan and it's James, and they kind of rotate in and out depending on who is actually giving feedback at the time and is speaking in Discord or on the forums. So they're both more grounded in their approach, and they take simple routes to be effective. And I'm somebody who needs a grounding influence in my content. James has said on a few occasions that Adam is a generational talent that just wants to be a mid-card comedy act. And there's a lot to agree with on that. I really do like to insert comedy, and sometimes it's not appropriate to insert the comedy there. So hearing him kind of grounds me. Hearing Pugh grounds me as well. So they also called me boring in 2017, and I never forget that all 3 of them were right, even though they kind of looked at it differently. They all arrived at the same conclusion, and that was that I was boring. So the 5th person is actually new. It's you. You became a voice of critique by just sheer force and will. You reviewed shows, you reviewed content, you were loud, you were brash, and you gave what I thought was fair criticism. Even if I didn't like it, I recognized that you had nuggets of truth in your statements, and it took me a little bit to kind of recognize that I should listen, because you weren't on that list at that time. But eventually, you forced your way into that conversation of, okay, he probably represents a fair few folks in OCW. I should probably listen. And then I have a shout out to Max. He gives great insight. He doesn't do it enough, but I think that he's probably one of the most insightful people in OCW to talk to. And ultimately, that's my 5 or 6. I think they're diverse enough in their thoughts, their actions. I find enjoyment when they do find commonalities, and the fact that they like different things. If they're a majority of them are feeling good about it, then I feel good about my work, and I won't worry about it so much if they're all saying good things about it. So, like I said, my rule is if 3 of them start dropping hints about not liking something or something didn't hit, then I start thinking to myself, what am I doing? And I look at it a little bit more closely. I consider making changes. And this happened in the lead up with my title fight to Doc. You were critical. Jay kept dropping the he's old statements everywhere. And then Jamie was kind of to the entire situation. So I made changes because 3 out of my 5 were not digging what I was producing. And that forced me to make the appropriate changes. And I've done a lot better since then. Like the response has been significantly improved, and therefore I'm a happier person because I listened to, in my opinion, the right people. So, do you have a 5? Do you have like a group of people that you listen to, or is this like you're just not worried about that?
No, I definitely have people that I listen to more. Jake is definitely one of them. Liam is one. Max is one. Jamie is one. Me and Jay, it's up and down. Sometimes I listen to him more than others. It's just because I feel like for me and him, like we kind of start on the same path when we're like we'll like talk about random things every once in a while, like very very rare blue moons. I don't want people to think that he and I talk a lot because I'm sure he'd be like, motherfucker, don't say that. But when we do have our semi quarterly conversation, it's like we'll start at the same path and then we diverge. And I'm just like, nah, bro, like you're losing me here. So I'm sure I'll lose him, but I like when he and I talk because he gives me different perspectives and he helps me, maybe see it from a different eye. Another person who I talk to all the time, not as much frequently, but is Austin Lee. He's a very big proponent in some of the things that I've done in OCW. Like if there's ever been probably someone in like behind the scenes of who like pulling the curtain back a little bit for some of my stuff is absolutely Austin Lee. He probably has known a lot of my ideas before like I ever fully executed them.
Okay. So, do you at what point, like if you hear criticism from any of the people that you named, like at what point do you stay the course and at what point do you say to yourself, okay, maybe this is not landing the way I want it to? Is there a point where you reassess the situation, or are you pretty committed once you come up with an idea?
Usually I'm pretty committed once I come up with an idea, mainly because I believe in my ideas enough to where if I think I'm going to be able to pull it off and I have the time frame to do it, I usually am going to kind of stick to my guns and bury my feet in the sand. I would have to say probably the time where I rethought an idea the latest was the last babyface run attempt. That was Jay was not about it. Jamie was not very was like he didn't dislike it, but he was like I think you're probably doing it a little bit too quick. Like I think some of the things that you're trying aren't really landing how they should. Liam was kind of for it. He understood where I was coming from because I feel like he and I kind of see certain things a lot alike, but also then disagree on things really hard. Jake was obviously about it. Jake saw the vision and saw what was trying to be done. But then obviously, of course, just the community was not accepting of it and they weren't going to accept it. So that's when at that time, that was when, I had won the world title at Anniversary after the, Aries had, left. So, then Max came back in the picture. And then that's when I was like, okay, if you're coming back in the picture, like there is no way anybody is going to want and cheer me to beat you. So it's back to being the bad guy. And then here we are.
I mean, here we are, and I think that's probably for the best, right? Like, I mean, it sounds like I obviously wasn't fully like here to see all the developments as they slowly started to transition to that point and stuff. I wasn't integrated enough at that time to fully understand the situation. But like, did that failure of what you were trying to become ultimately define who your character would become? Like, did you take things from that and say, okay, this is what I tried to do, and I'm bringing that element of rejection into what I'm doing now? Did you have that consideration when you went full heel again?
Oh, absolutely. And I even did it in the Max feud where I kept mentioning it. It's like these people just cheer you because you're you. You've done horrible things now, and Parka's done horrible things, yet they cheer you. Why? It's unfair, So, like, as a handler, it sucked because I wanted to see it through, and I really felt like from what I was doing, I thought I was going to be able to do it, but the rejection of it was just like, hey, it is what it is. You got to do things like looking back at it and kind of the timeline and how I was doing it. I would say, there definitely were probably some things I could have slowed down. I could have maybe added some, extra oomph to certain moments that I did. And, like, hey, that when the time comes again and, that attempt happens again, I have that prior failure of like, oh, okay, this didn't work last time for a couple of these reasons. Let's reassess these reasons and move forward and try to make them better.
Okay. So at this point, your character, I will say this about him, like, it would be really hard for me to buy in. And I remember talking with, like, I left, I came back, and Parka was kind of going through this transition. And I told you it's really hard for me to see Parka as a face because when I left, he was very much a heel. He was very cemented in that role, and now he's even more cemented into that. Like, for me, it would be really hard to see that character as a face. Um, I remember watching like Randy Orton try to be a face in 2011, and it just wasn't clicking the right way. Obviously, they kept going with it, but he was always a character of, he's a heel. He's very much a heel. It's very hard for me to see him as anything else, and it took a long time to where he's at now, where it's like, okay, the due respect is given here, and we now see him in a much more babyface role. And I think Parka's kind of at that stage where, for me, the transition would be a very, very, very long time coming. But
oh yeah,
that's
absolutely.
just that's just me. Ultimately, any story can get told in OCW, but we're done with the script. Like, we got through what we want to get to. I'm really happy that we got through it. I also know we have a huge backlog of questions that people had been asking and shit. So I know that you were aware of this and you've told me like the last two times. So let's stop with this main topic here. Let's get a couple of minutes in here of these questions.
Okay, so here's one, and we actually some of these we absolutely did mention, but they, for reasons they didn't come out. So there's a couple quick ones. Probably one of my favorite ones that was asked. I think the last time for the last episode, these were asked. Junko asked, "How do you feel about Quartz the character?"
Well, I fucking hate the guy. I hate Quartz. Can't stand him. He's a piece of shit. He's a terrible person. But this is what I'm supposed to say in this moment. Um, I have been critical of Quartz in the past, the character, because I didn't like how he did the split personality thing. Hell, I've never been a fan of it. The reason I embraced the concept of like doing this promo split personality is kind of like a dig at him and the character itself. To talk about that and brand and bridge into that. So I didn't really like how he tried to do it. He tried to do a lot of things very subtly. Um, Ultimately, the reveal of H2O being his brother was something that kind of came out of the blue. And sometimes I feel like he kind of gets lost in this dense forest of his own creation and failed. And this is earlier. This is much earlier in his career. Kind of failed to get the points across. I would say that since the new Storm, like the Quartz character has been fantastic, has been fabulous. But we're talking like post 2021. Before that, was not a huge fan of the character. But now I think that it's very concise storytelling, very strong storytelling, and a very well presented character. One of my favorites in the last 5 years for sure.
Yeah, he's definitely probably one of the greatest characters OCW has seen. That's like the dude is so layered, and his approach with how he does things, the very small changes and some of the more blatant changes and how he's doing things. Like, I thought I had him figured out. The blue guy was going to be the bad guy and the red guy was going to be our big, beautiful hero. And then here we go to where now, the red guy isn't the clear cut, hero that people were thinking, depending on where you want to sit on history. I love Quartz. I think he's a very, very good character. And I feel like he's one of those characters that when he's not around, you can sense that there is a threat that is not around anymore.
Oh, with that though, also, like, Jake is on the Mount Rushmore of handlers. Like, there's no debate in my mind that if you had like two of those things, one of them for characters and one from handlers, you could probably make a pretty good argument for his characters. But there is no debate in my mind that Jake is on the Mount Rushmore of handlers for what he's done with Quartz and with Deb, as well, and then all these other smaller characters that have been very vital in telling of stories. I don't think that there's even a remote debate that can be made that he doesn't deserve to be remembered as one of the greatest handlers of all time.
Yeah, here. I'm with you on that one.
Okay, next question.
The next one that I'm going to pick out of this, but a brief break from it that I want to mention. Shout out to Liam. Pretty much all of the last episode, we basically were answering and using his questions for the base of our conversation.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to remind them again because you deserve it, but Adam lost the first recording of that. So all of these questions were answered, but Adam just hates you all. And he threw it out and said, we need to re-record it. One of the questions from Trey, because I'm looking for literal questions and some of the things already passed. One of the questions from Trey is, who is the last blacksmith a Hall of Famer? Before you answer, I'm going to say absolutely not. I think the last blacksmith is an enigma. I think he I think he had a very, 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 very good run. And then that was kind of it. I feel like Hall of Famers, they're doing that stuff for a very, very long time. And, Horse is kind of come and gone. I think if, throughout the next couple of years, if he comes back and kind of keeps doing what he was doing, then yes, maybe there's talks for that. But as of sitting right now, no, he's not.
Ooh. I'm going to use the UFC as an example here.
Okay.
So I remember when the Ultimate Fighter thing came to be. I was a huge fan back then. That's when I was still, participating. And Griffin Bonner and Forrest Griffin. I don't know your familiarity with it. I would imagine you probably are familiar with the fight itself.
Yeah, I love that fight.
It was a great fucking fight, and I remember the conversation like arising: are these guys Hall of Famers for what they did? And Bonner obviously never went on to win a title, and Forrest won the title, but he, it didn't really make much of an impact after that, and he got pretty much absolutely fucked up by Anderson Silva and embarrassed. Like, that was terrible. I remember that was like when my heart broke. I just, my heart shattered. But I argued that they were going to become Hall of Famers because of the significant role they played in the establishing of the UFC in mainstream media. And like, it's really hard to put Horse into perspective. Like, on a traditional scale, no, he's not going to be a Hall of Famer. But in terms of the impacts that he has had, and he's been very divisive, I get that. But he's had programs with, he's had programs with Cass, and he's had programs with Quartz, and he's had a program with Bingo. And he's had a program with H2O. Like, he has been a standout. Somebody comes back, he's a huge, like, almost celebrity wing of the WWE Hall of Fame, so to speak, right? So in that regards, because of the impact he has had, even if it's not titles, I would argue that he has a pretty fair shot of making it to the Hall of Fame. But I do agree, within the traditional sense, probably not.
Okay, that's understandable.
All right, what do we got?
The next one, which this is kind of like a blanket question, but it's a question. Who needs to improve this coming season? That comes from Jinx.
Um, ooh, that's a loaded question.
Yeah, I think it really depends on improve what exactly. I think there are a number of people that I see. I don't even know if I could say need to improve, because needing, the word need is implying that they care about what we're saying. But who knows? Like, one of the people, in my opinion, that I think needs to improve is Megan Suzuki. I would love to see Megan Suzuki become a more prominent member of OCW. I think they have a really neat caw, and it seems like they kind of have one foot in with an arm. Like, they're kind of like in the door, but they're not fully in the door, and it's kind of like they're waiting to do an Irish goodbye. I don't really want to believe that. I really do want them to make themselves more acclimated and integrated within OCW. So that's someone that I guess you could say needs to improve, because they're a rookie. I feel like it's going to be more based on rookies, for my opinion on this. What I'm
You're
actually
not
really
you're not wrong, but at the same
okay.
time, that's why I won't. That's why I won't say Megan. Like, I wouldn't say any rookie. Like, anybody who came in at the end of last year. Like, I'm not gonna say them because, I kind of argue there's this grace period before you can really even start judging them, and she might have gotten past that grace period, but then left. So maybe that grace period is still in effect. Um, you know, maybe the answer is Jinx the character, because while the handler is getting better, um, and has found success, not necessarily with the character Jinx. Like, Jinx is still a developing character that I think a lot of us have questions about what he is and what he's going to be. So that's one of the characters that jumps to mind that I want to see improve. And once again, you brought up, like, want. You do they want to improve, or do they think their character is at where they need to be right now? Um, so on that note, it's maybe Ashley Moore as well. Maybe Ashley Moore has gotten to the point where, like, the character hasn't really evolved much in the past, like, 6 years. Like, very similar look, very similar. Obviously, it's the same music. Um, so maybe that's a statement that needs to be made. Like, I would like to see the character evolve. Does that necessarily mean improve? I don't know, but I'm just gonna throw it out there for the sake of it.
I
So
like that.
those two kind of jump to mind. I'd really like to see Ashley Moore evolve as a character. I think that we are long overdue for seeing that. So those are my two that I'm gonna go with.
I really like that. I'd like to add, I think with Jinx, I really like what you were getting at with him. I would like to see. I really want to see him. I don't know if I want to see if it's improve, but I want to see him kind of, I guess, lock in more. It seems at certain moments he is kind of looking ahead after his North American title run. Now, I don't know if that's because maybe, he said that he's not going to have Jinx go away once he loses the North American Championship. I know you made the comment on the forum after the review that you find how it's insane that Steven Jackson is able just to cut such a smooth promo, and then it seems like he's more comfortable cutting a promo as Steven Jackson than Jinx, which I think honestly, I would like to see Steven Jackson overtake Jinx as the main. I would like to see him be the number one priority. The Ashley comment was, if I was next to you, I would be squeezing your shoulders, moving you back and forth with happiness, because I could not agree more with you. I would have to say that you're spot on the money, just because actually reminds me, if we're using a real wrestling analogy, reminds me of the Charlotte Flair of OCW. When she's around, she's usually involved in, some high stakes thing. Like, I feel like the feud with Belle was a kind of a nice change up and a rare change up from her. She's usually either in an FI, she's a women's champ, she's in the women's S Cup, she's the women's pride champ. She's always at the top. She's, we haven't really seen Ashley, I don't want to say have a fall, because she has had a fall, but it's more so just because, like, she kind of seems like she disappears. She wins a title, holds on to it, loses it, and then she's kind of gone for a little bit. And, there isn't any organic structure to what she's doing. It's more so just like, yep, I'm a mean girl. I'm the most decorated OCW woman ever, and I'm here to add even more accolades. But it's like, yeah, I'm 100% with you. I want to see her. I want to see her, whatchamacall, evolve, and give me some new layers to the character, and not just the same thing that we've had for all these years.
All right, what do we got next?
What we have next is, I don't know if we answered this, but maybe regardless we can. Jinx once again said, "Who's the next Hall of Famer?"
Oh, fuck. So I don't know when the next Hall of Fame ceremony is going to be. I think it's going to be at Certified Greatness. I don't know when it's been held. I don't think it's ever been held on a regular schedule per se, right?
I don't think so. I would agree.
Okay, so
I think Jay just does it when he gets privy and wanting to induct people, or when he thinks the time is right.
Okay, so it might be at Certified Greatness if it's a yearly thing. It might not be at Certified Greatness. I think I'm under the impression the awards come out at Certified Greatness. Maybe I don't know. I don't know what the schedule is. Obviously, he's got a million things to worry about and stuff. But if I was going to pick the next Hall of Famer, I'm picking Rex. Rex is the person that I think would be the most appropriate to go in next, as he is currently, I'm guessing, semi-retired or fully retired. I don't know where he's at with that, but he's not around, right? So he's not around. He's a multi-time CCW champion. He's had multiple main events of Lucian. He's a North American champion as well. I don't think he's ever won anything besides that. And then he did have a tag team run, right? What was it called?
Scum Society.
Yeah, Scum Society. So he's won a tag team championship as well. So that makes him a Grand Slam champion, right? So I would say Rex next. What about you?
I would disagree with Rex, just because I don't think I have one, because
he said next, so it doesn't have to be this year. It's just who's next.
Okay. I think then, yeah, B17 Courts. Yeah, I guess you could throw Rex into there if we're doing that. I was just being overly strict because I was thinking oh, okay. It's because I just don't want to see. I'm not a huge person of seeing legends being active all the time. I feel like in real wrestling, legends being active is very rare, or a lot of the times people they're not inducted until they're done, their career is done. And I feel like just the three names that I mentioned, those guys aren't done. Rex isn't around right now, but he's gonna come back. I don't care what anyone says. He will absolutely be back. Okay, B17 ain't going nowhere, and neither is Quartz.
Okay, so by that definition, let's say all three of us are done after this year, which is not going to happen. I mean, I can pretty safely say that for myself. You're gonna like put all three of them in next, if you got your wish. If like they're not competing, therefore they're ready to move on to the next stage.
I think if all well, yeah, I mean, you don't have to. I mean, like the last class that we had was 3 people, and that was in 2025, and we had Cast, Dragana, and Bertha. So, we can work with the three, but
Okay, well, how about this person then? What about Velk?
no,
No, really?
no, no.
Because you believe that Velk's not done?
I don't think. No, I mean, I think Valk is probably done. I could maybe see him coming back, depending on if whoever approached them. But I just that's a hard one for me. Like,
I mean, earlier you did say Velk is one of the biggest baby faces in OCW history. Like,
yeah, it doesn't mean you're a guaranteed Hall of Famer. I
I
think
just
what
feel like
Valk
those
is,
two things like correlate pretty strongly to each other. But go ahead, go ahead.
I think Valk has done, because I was around in OCW when Valk was doing a bunch of their stuff later in 2K19. So it's like I have seen what she's done, and she has been absolutely one of the greats. But I think it's just because I can't. I'm still in that mindset of like, nah, she's not totally done. But there's so many names, man. There's a lot of names that like I think just in my mind I wouldn't think of Velk right away. There's more people in the forefront that I would be inducting before I got to Velk.
Okay, okay, that's fair. All right, let's cap this. Let's say two more questions, and then let's call it.
All right, two more questions. Um, this one, I guess. Should women be allowed to fight for the tag title since they don't have a tag division? From John.
Um, this actually got brought up on the Lost podcast, so I'm going to stick with what I said, even though I know that you're going to disagree with it, and even though you made a good point. So you're going to have a chance to you completely wreck me on this again. I was going to say, I would be in favor of seeing a women's tag team division because I feel like the division is really building up. We have a lot of exclusive characters within that division as well, or more exclusive characters in that division than we've had in the past. And therefore, it lends itself to say, okay, well, we probably have access to a lot more characters overall than we ever had before. But at the same time, like having the women's Pride Championship probably muddies the water of being able to say that we have tag teams. But think about how we always rotate back. There's always somebody saying the tag division's dead, blah blah blah, etc. etc. So I feel like that conversation would happen anyways. But I was in favor of saying, oh, why don't we have women's tag team titles? And I would also be in favor of women like fighting for the tag titles as well. Don't really have a problem with that. It's just my initial reaction was, okay, well, we could have women's tag titles, and that would make perfect sense to me. What about you?
No,
I know,
no,
I know that you're gonna say no, but
no,
it
no,
had to
no.
happen. Go
There,
ahead, tell me why I'm wrong.
there's not enough, man. There's not enough women to make it be worthwhile for a women's tag division. I do think, however, I wouldn't mind if it happened organically. If there was a women's tag team that started to come up, and you know, they got prominent, you know. But one of the things for me, and what I mentioned in the Lost episode, was I did not. I don't want to rush to being, all using all sorts of intergender stuff. I feel like right now it should be something that isn't very, you know, we're doing all the time. It should be more, circumstantial. So no, not right now.
Okay, clean, concise, to the point, which means we're on our final question. So make it a doozy, make it a good one. Let's end strong.
And strong. All right, I'm going to ask a question.
Ah, fuck it. Okay, go ahead.
Who do you think is going to win the FIs?
I could talk about who I want to win the FIs, right?
Nope. Who do you think is going to win the FIs?
I need time to think about the women's, but I think Quartz is going to pull it out because I think that it's just so fucking right that I want it to happen so badly that I'm convincing myself that it's going to happen just because it's so fucking juicy. I've talked myself into this is what's going to happen. This is what I desperately want to happen. But kudos to you also, because the last time we got together and we talked and we actually put a podcast out there, I was like all optimistic and shit. Like, yeah, this is gonna be fucking great. Yeah, people get a chance to show what they got, and they're going to be awesome, and they're gonna be great. Yeah, no, don't worry about it, dude. They're gonna be fine. And then
tragedy struck.
Fucking tragedy. And you have been, and you were like, Adam, you're an idiot. Like, why are you so optimistic? Like, I'm optimistic because I know that it can be great. I know that it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine. And it wasn't.
It was not fine.
It was not fine. It was.
This was not good.
I got it so wrong. And on that podcast, you're like, Adam, you're wrong. I'm like, no, I'm not. And I was. Okay, so men's, yeah, I'm talking it into existence. I'm willing it into existence. I'm going to pick Quartz, but you got to give me some time to think about the women's. So you take over for a second here, okay?
I think Joe Deaver is going to win the men's, and I think Ashley Moore is going to win the women's. I think with all of the other women in that match, I think Ashley, because Ashley has already been in an FI, I'm almost certain Ashley has won FI.
I'll go hunt that down, but I'm pretty sure that's accurate. Yes.
Look at me, knowing
history and shit. Yeah, maybe you're a historian.
History.
There. Well, you're talking about
Ashley Moore won it in 2019. So, or actually, because you don't know how to enter anything, 2019. But Ashley has the prior experience, the prior win, and she's a smaller woman. And I just think Junko is going to get too obsessed with, trying to worry about Scotty and Sarah Moore. Sarah Moore is way too goddamn big. That bitch is going to break the ladder. And Scotty don't got no killer instinct. Joe Deaver is going to be the wild card who wins it because he's gonna fucking steal it, and it's gonna be brilliant because it's gonna be such a feel good moment because Quartz is gonna be right there to winning, and Joe Deaver's gonna come up, knock his big bitch ass off the ladder, and take the briefcase, and then he's gonna be the future investment holder.
I mean, prediction wise, it doesn't sound horrible. Like Joe Deaver sneakily gets to it. I mean, he's gonna cash in on me then, right? So, okay, cool. I mean, this is really hard because I'm trying to speak into existence what I want to happen versus what could actually happen, and what you've just described does not sound outside the realm of possibility at all. For the women's side, it's really hard to call. Like, if you're going off of experience and sneakiness, yeah, it's Ashley Moore. Ashley Moore is a sneaky little son of a bitch. I'm not going to say Scotty. I don't feel Scotty's going to, because I do agree with you on that lack of killer instinct and stuff. Is it Junko?
No,
the lights get too bright, right?
Lights get too bright.
Lights get too bright.
It's Ashley, dude. It's written for Ashley.
I don't it's a clusterfuck. There's no guarantee you're gonna know what happens here.
Oh, absolutely.
But betting wise, when I go into the match and it's betting time, my initial bets is going to be for Ashley Moore. You can't not pick. Can't not say that. That's the way it's gonna be, right?
Listen, man, if the Charlotte of OCW is in a match, you have to go with her. She's going to win it.
Well, I mean, I'm going back and I'm looking at Turmoil 330 and looking at the qualifying matches, trying to like extract knowledge of like who they beat and stuff because I couldn't remember who they like beat to get into the qualifiers or get into the match itself. It's like I'm not really gaining anything from that. Like, there's no advantage to be had going that route. So like, I'm forced to say I don't know. I think your reasoning and your logic is sound. I don't think there's any way to debate it. But I'm still gonna pick Quartz for the men's.
That's fair.
Okay.
No, that's definitely fair.
All right, man. We're at the end of this conversation. It's been a good one. How would you like to sign us out tonight?
Man, it's been an honor. Thank you all so much to everybody who has stuck around and listened to us rant and rave about any and all things OCW that people can think about or Adam can come up with. I've been Brian Williams. I've been so graciously blessed with the wonderful, handsome Adam Helmsing. I hope you all have a great